Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are diving into key changes in license enforcement in Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management with Bart Spiech, Vice President of Product at XPLUS. Bart discusses what has changed between AX 2012 and Dynamics 365 licensing models and how D365 is changing in the coming months in some important ways. These changes will have implications for customers still planning a move from on-premises to the cloud, as well as for existing D365 FNSDM customers. And while many will be able to adapt without too much disruption, Bart says, there will be edge cases and scenarios where organizations could face major changes that could impact license cost and the way their solutions are configured. We also discuss how security setup projects have evolved and how user security government, or USG, can support license optimization and compliance going forward. All right, well, Bartosz, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do and what XPLUS does?
Thank you so much, Jason. Big pleasure. Sure thing. So my name is Bartosz Spiech. You can call me Bart. I'm Vice President of Products in XPLUS. For last 10 years, I'm in XPLUS dealing with products mainly. Actually, I started as a consultant dealing with security projects, implementation, maintenance of Dynamics, Xapta 2009, 4.0, and then drifting up to finance supply chain management. Lastly, last year we had a big success. One of my baby product called Security Setup was acquired by Microsoft, and now it does the big bang on the market. Everything what I'm doing is under the roof of XPLUS. XPLUS is the well-known partner in Poland, a partner system integrator. We implement Dynamics. We implement Xapta actually from 2004. We are focused on Polish market with some exposure on the European, but right now we do a lot of expansion in the SaaS products, building very unique, very R&D focused products for biz apps overall.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I think really we wanted to, you mentioned your long and your company's long experience with the F&O suite and Dynamics AX as its predecessor was known, which goes way back now. I guess 2004 you said for your firm. So that's over 20 years. Wow. That's a long time. And it's a product that keeps changing. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about, if I could segue a bit. And that's the latest license enforcement updates that are coming. So we're talking at a time when you've talked about this and your team has presented and written on this topic, but it's great to just talk about it too, to hear more. So there's significant changes coming to license enforcement in Dynamics 365 F&O applications. Can you talk a little bit more about how those changes are going to impact solutions from XPLUS, Executive Automats, and what the connection is there?
Sure. So license reinforcement is actually a first very unique situation where Microsoft will finally have their hands on the licenses of company. They will exactly know how many licenses you need to run your business in ERP system, in Dynamics FSCM. Back in the days when AX was there, on-premises solutions, Microsoft was not in control of that. So in particular, in Xapta and in the former days of F&O, you had the moment where you could tell I'm running 100 users in Dynamics, but at the end of the day, Microsoft didn't know exactly if these users were doing simple stuff or they were doing like a full scope operations in all modules. So it was very easy to cheat on licenses. And that also applies for device licenses. So it's pretty complicated. Actually, licensing is the most updated document in the Microsoft stack. Whenever you're going to take a look at the licensing guide, you're going to notice that there is a new date on the top. So the funny fact is that change actually happened right after we provided the tool application for security, so-called Executive Automats for Security Setup. That was the former name. We've run a lot of different projects across the globe, going even to 4,500 instances of users in South Africa. That was a pretty nice project where we've rebuilt the whole role ready for SODs, for compliance. And those and the specific and multiple other projects gave Microsoft a foundation to say, hey, that approach works. It is simplified. It sets new standard across Dynamics how to implement security access rights. And we realized last year that in their intentions, they had in mind a bigger plan. And the bigger plan was actually to finally make a reinforcement giving a clear, receiving a clear information from customers what licenses they are using. So last year, Microsoft acquired the license. They incorporated this in 1043 version this year. And from that moment, everybody on the globe, every Dynamics instance has the user security governance, that's the name for the application. And when the release started, I think that was March. Microsoft finally said, hey, I think that was September 1st, everybody needs to do the exercise and map their users to licenses in PPAC. And that was actually an exercise which is 90% of the cases of Dynamics instances, it is impossible because companies were using the entire system in the wrong way from the security perspective, in the way that it was incompatible with licenses. There was no transparency, and everything is a pretty big mess. And now when they require transparency from you, and they require from you that you're going to tell what these users will do in the system, actually this means that in multiple cases you will overpay because you can't tell based on security role what this specific individual in the system does. I mean, that's pretty complex process. Security at the end of the day is one of the most complex material in Dynamics. It's the whole role-based security is great. It's very picky, very detailed. But since you have so many configuration possibilities, it's one of the harder to learn and to get. I love the topic, so I can talk about that for years, but that's a kind of long story short.
I mean, there's so much there to consider. And I guess the one follow-up question I would have is that relationship between security and user management / license management. Is that something that's unique to the sort of the F&O, the evolution of this product in particular, that security is so tightly tied or so dependent on, or maybe the other way around, that relationship is so strong between the two?
Yeah. I mean, since Dynamics 2012 had the foundation where again, to tell quickly what this is about, it's all about entry points. In the system, when you do have forms with multiple functionalities, actual buttons, underneath every button and form, you have something called an entry point. And that entry point has a parameter which tells you what license you need to have in order to get access to button, form, report anything about it. So there is a strong connection to entry points and licensing. At the end of the day, system unpacks all the access rights you've got and all references to the licenses which are coming from that equation. And it will tell you need license A, B, or C. So you actually have that buffet approach where you pay what you use. But if you use standardized roles, which is the case for 90% of the organizations, it is like you are on the buffet and you take everything, but you're going to eat only a few croissants. So you pay for steak.
You leave shrimp on your plate and steak, yeah.
Yep. So that is I had a big pleasure working with multiple MVPs, and the common agreement is like 90% of the companies right now are in the corner case. They need to rebuild something. And unfortunately, Microsoft gave us a very short timeline. It's just a few months for a project which very often takes a year plus. With user security governance, it is optimized, but you need to learn it.
So plenty of work to do there. I wanted to also understand what this means for companies that are coming from an AX 2012 environment. When they're migrating, can they retain their existing licenses and security structure?
That's a perfect question. And I think right now you see the AI era, agentification. We've got capabilities which are making us, this is a game changer on the way how you're going to do your business. And on AX 2012, you can't have it unless somebody will port that, downgrading to AX 2012. So majority of organizations, they implemented AX and they want to go up. And this whole project might be expensive, but it is worth because you have AI. One of the components of those migrations, of those upgrades, is security access rights. You may say, AX 2012, it looks pretty the same as F&O, but from the licensing perspective and security access rights, you can't actually take, upgrade, and use. Unfortunately, you have to rewrite your access rights. You can't use any more standard, so you have to record and you have to build the role set for your new instance of finance and operations for the upgrade process. So It is pretty unique moment because that's the first time where it is a high priority, and Microsoft is pushing to get this done within the upgrade process. And if you're going to take a look, because again, if that is the first time, most of the partners, they don't have high competencies on security access right design. There are few partners across the globe which they know a lot and they are specialized. The rest of the world is like they implement, they will go live, they will do hypercurve customer, but all of that is done on standardized role. So they will tell you, we just implemented for your dynamics. This is the standard pack of the roles, duties, and privileges. You have to pick what works for you. You can modify a little bit and just go and fly. And that is the root cause of the problem, that this design of the role was never element, or maybe few partners were specialized, so they had that unique selling point. But now everybody needs to learn about it. Everybody needs to understand the concept of process-based duties, roles based on the hierarchy of organization, and every other concept which comes out from entry points and license allocation for them.
So, okay. So far I've learned from this, whether you are an existing Dynamics 365 FNSCM customer who perhaps implemented it, deployed it in some time in the past with the help of a partner, you were maybe over provisioned. If you're planning an upgrade to it from an AX solution, you have probably a different scope of work than you might have expected in the past because these realities have changed. And you mentioned partners, and that's where I want to go next. Where do partners fit in terms of the actions they should be taking to support customers now that these changes are coming into play?
Partners will right now have two types of customers or two types of situations they're going to find themselves in. The one will be, hey, I'm actually allocating licenses in PPAC, and system tells me that I need 300 more licenses, and what I can do. So in that scenario where a customer is unhappy with amount of licenses they need to purchase, you simply, as a partner, you need to go and find out. In practice, we see the most common role in the system, the most common position, understanding that you're going to build for that position or role. And if you're going to take the 20% of the most common job titles and you're going to convert them to roles, job title equal to role, you will get 80% of the savings or 80% of optimizations you can do in the system. ERP system, the Dynamics FSCM, most of the users are doing operations in multiple places, in multiple modules, kind of a finance team, some purchasing. If you have very large spectrum of operations, you will need to anyway have a high license. So those individuals, those specific less common positions, you can just keep them even on the standard roles. If you're not focused on compliancy, you can simply trim a little bit the roles, but focus on those sales representative, warehouse operations, focus on approvers, focus on time registrations, those elements which are spread across everybody. And we had a very nice example where a partner was actually building a time registration role. And just the fact that they did edit and correct time registration journals, they had to pay 10 times more for a singular user rather than if they're going to have just create. So that small difference, update and correct versus creation and registration of the time itself. And that was the kind of idea what the access was about, made them pay tens of thousands of dollars yearly. So you have to balance this out. You have to do that exercise and have full awareness on your implementation team as a partner that those small changes can impact drastically your licenses, your total cost of the ownership of Dynamics. So from 1043, as a partner, you are able to check that feature called user security governance. You can learn it. There are some great materials from Microsoft on TechNet. There are fast track sessions, which I had a pleasure to participate in, where we talk about within 1 hour about the product. And we also created something called guide for that product for user security governance. So there are some practical examples and 2 hours of training material, which you consume. It will make you understand the baseline concept, and then you're going to extrapolate to user security governance with all functionalities. So as a partner, you need to turn on 1043 instance, learn about user security governance, make the exercise of existing customers which are unhappy with the licenses and help them unpack those users which are the most common and rebuild their role set. Take the 20%, you're going to have 80% of the savings. And that probably in most cases will be a few weeks of work. It will do what they wanted and you're going to be safe. But the second type of the customer, if you are in the implementation phase and likely it is you are in the phase where you have to modify a bit of scope of the implementation, again, you have to plan to use user security governance. Within the implementation phase of specific Dynamics instance, you are able to adjust or convert every fit process and gap which was designed for the application and it was signed off on the UAT. You can convert that to actual duty privilege and then build roles. So there are available methodologies on the market which are taking USG and helping that accommodate on the implementation process. So Microsoft is equipping us with great tools to fight with or kind of to be more agile when it comes to licensing within the license reinforcement.
All right. So yeah, I mean, certainly a very clear set of ways in which partners can actually be very helpful to their clients in this new era of licensing for the solution. I would say like there's definitely things to learn, but customers need this guidance very urgently if they haven't already begun to look at it. And you mentioned most cases. There are going to be edge cases, I assume, as well. What advice do you have for customers who do have more complex or non-standard licensing scenarios?
So there are multinational entities which are having, let's say, 40 entities across the globe, and they are mostly doing different stuff. They are very complex, it will be very hard for them to be on time, to be by November 1st with all the roles created. The approach 20-80% with the kind of do the most common stuff and then focus on the most rare ones might work. But I think you need to focus on the relation of Microsoft to kind of talk with them where you are and what is the scale. What is the scale of in compliance? There is a grace period which gives you some exit card from that equation, meaning that Microsoft might give you a little bit buffer time for the project. So you need to talk with your success manager, representative who owns your account. And from the customer perspective, it will be some time which will make this project possible to be delivered. The first thing you should do as a customer, you should actually run the report to see where you are, because you might get in a positive situation that everything is fine, but that will be again on the different edge, a corner case. If we focus on those bad corner cases where or the majority of the market, you will simply need to budget the project. You will need to make sure that your partner has competency about building the access rights. But if you have no grace period and you have no clue how to do, you have no partner which can support you, you can rely on something new, which is on the market, something new for Dynamics, something called observability. It's a funny word. Observability of application is actually a capability to convert user observations into the actual roles. So you don't design the role, you observe the application, and based on what users are doing, you identify processes, and those identified processes can be converted to duties, then to roles. In a shortcut, SAP has had a few observability applications, and at the end of the day, SAP bought out one of the observability functions and they incorporated that as standard. Dynamics is starting to do and pick up something called App Insights, which can do some background, but it is not so detailed as it should be to get full detail about the user actions, which will be converted to security. So you can browse for observability applications available on Dynamics, which can give you a shortcut and which will lead you a possibility to trim continuously your roles. Because the observations, if you start, this can take or it can last for 12 months, 18 months, or even years. And that is a goal because in AI era, if you're going to observe your Dynamics instance, you will get insights about what AI agents to build, what is wrong with your environment. It's just massive value about information. It is like you're going to have agents standing behind every business user in Dynamics. So that's actually a Pandora box, which I don't want to open to not drift away from the security topic, but observability will be a key for future, but also it can change the way how you design the security access rights in Dynamics.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I know that's not the focus of our conversation here, but I just wanted to make sure I understand, because it sounds like what you're saying is that with the emergence of agents and Microsoft's vision for the way agents would work with a Dynamics 365 F&O instance, for example, it's possible that more agents are developed and become an element of an overall business process or business applications platform for a company. As those agents are added, it will have some kind of a meaningful effect potentially on how many F&O user licenses are needed or what kind of licenses are needed, because the tasks and the actual operations that the system overall executes could change. And so maybe 10% fewer people need to be in F&O working in it, as opposed to, an agent and an MCP server interacting to get work done. I don't know. It could have some sort of effect, and that effect could be dynamic over time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, straight to the point. For organization, you will see on the last BizApps community event in Seattle, there was a question: who is exploring AI? Who is actually doing something in real time in the applications? And there was different groups of companies, but mostly when you take a look on where the community is or where the partners are in the AI change or AI era, they are just exploring. They're starting to pick traction and do something, but this is not yet something which will be a game changer. The fact is that data is gold, because you need to understand what it can convert to agent and how you going to know that. You need to have insights to the application to see what makes the most error rate, where is the highest error rate, where people are making mistakes, or what is the most repetitive task in the application. And very often to discover this, when you have 40 entities across the globe, you would need to go from entity to entity to kind of a quote spy on people to find it out. And from the B2C market, on every shop, you have already some stuff like a Hotjar and analytics, which are observing you from your purchasing approach. And this kind of is very similar from Google Analytics, Hotjar, to what observability is in Dynamics. You simply analyze the behavior to find out patterns which can be converted to AI. So more data you've got, it'll be better for you that system will propose you an agent, a meaningful agent for your application. That will be a game changer for a very long term. And indeed, at the end of the day, thinking about licensing, that will be another change, because now we pay for users, UX users. And how are you going to pay for co-pilots and probably tokens? That is a countable element. But we live in a very interesting moment, a change of everything. And for that, we have to adjust as well.
Yeah. And just to make sure I understand your outlook on observability, do you expect a much higher percentage of Dynamics 365 customers to adopt some form of that in the coming years? Do you think that'll be a core element of how organizations assess their use of these products?
Yes, because only with that way, the transition to agentification will be smooth.
Mm-hmm.
From multiple perspectives. Observability, this is the tip of the iceberg. We talk about AI agentification, but this is also prevention. You don't wait for tickets to come to support to know that the application doesn't work. The observability tells you that something goes wrong on the environment because users are picking error messages. You are able to secure entire system configuration, like turning on database log on entire application, which is impossible any other way around. And then you are able to define processes, understanding if users are actually performing the way how the system was designed. So you validate if the system was designed well and if the learning curve is right. The observability brings to the table such a great value for implementation, for maintenance, and later on for those occasions like security setup when you do licensing, for agentification. If you take a look on the other markets, other ERP systems, SAP, IFS, if you take a look on other markets which are not ERP related, but they are still enterprise, there is a data, and observability has a big piece of that cake. So I think And for Microsoft, the goal is to implement Dynamics as fast as possible with the highest quality as possible. And that way can be accomplished by observability because you're going to have insights to the applications which are impossible to get any other way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. And looking to the future more broadly, or not more broadly, but as it relates specifically to licensing, do you foresee this being the final sort of form of licensing D365 biz apps and FNSCM in particular? Or do you think Microsoft will continue to make adjustments?
Sure. I mean, the adjustments are inevitable. You see now reporting doesn't work so much. In the 1045, it's a little bit better, but still, we need to wait for the final shape of the reporting from Microsoft. Device licenses are still very hectic. So device licenses will be a change. As we talked a second ago, copilots, that'll be another change. If you're going to focus on the licensing guide for a second, you'll notice that there is a SCM project, HR, commerce, and so forth. It's clear that Microsoft is stripping down something which was big ERP back in the days, and you had all the modules under one roof. Now it's split it more and more. That was a pretty interesting approach, and I think AI does change this again. So Microsoft probably, that is just my opinion, they wanted to drift out to have better scalability on the licensing. So they have different types of licenses. But since AI era treats your ERP system just as a big database, and they want to remove all walls between different systems, they want to have AI agent with access to all database to help you as a user prompt on one place and get things done everywhere else. So we should expect actually a big change on the licensing anyway. Maybe not now, maybe in a couple of years. Finally, Dynamics has something which aligns with what is in CRM, customer engagement, and BC. So we probably will get few, maybe 2-3 years of breath, and then let's see. Let's open up popcorn and see what's going to pop out.
All right. Yeah. Certainly keeping us interested in watching what happens next. And, before we wrap up, where can our listeners learn more about the USG framework and just licensing in general?
Sure. So licensing guide is your top one element. Don't save the document, save the link to it, because the link is just giving you a refreshed version of PDF, which is constantly changing. User security governance, a YouTube from Tech Talk. We had a 1-hour walkthrough, but also if you would like, we have something called User Security Governance Masterclass. This is a 2 hours material with registration on Executive Automate site. We as designers, actually, I'm personally involved in the project. I've seen multiple videos of people reviewing USG in the first stage, in the first shape. And to be honest, that was such a drift from the original intentions of what I had when I was designing this tool that I said, guys, we need to build a free trial, free guide for everybody. So everybody will understand the concept of what we had in mind when we've been building security setup tool. So I think use that occasion. We want to keep it free for a few months at least. So the market will adjust and we'll learn how it was designed. So every implementation project will start with a good practice. So visit executiveautomate.com, register for Master Guide, go to TechNet, go to Fast Track YouTube channel. There's also a Jammer channel for USG where you can learn more about this context. And naturally, if you can have any questions, I'm more than happy to jump into the call to walk you through some concept of what is a user security governance and what to expect from it.
All right, excellent. Well, let's plan to put some of those key links into the show notes for this episode. So when you're listening to this, go check those out and we'll make sure that they're all included as well. Bart, such an interesting conversation and really it feels like it's something that's right in the middle of what's happening in this space and how things are evolving. So a really great time to do it. Also, I've learned a lot from this and from seeing you present recently and some of the writing that you and your team have done. Thanks for taking the time today. Anything else you wanted to add?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. It's a great journey. We are just from early morning Australia up to Seattle time, spread across the globe with different meetings. So I will need to pop into meeting in a few moments. Thank you so much for running the show. It's great to have moment where we can share with community what is going on, how to help out, because only that way, where the community is so strong, we can beat all other ERP systems and make something which changed the business in a very positive way. So thank you so much for doing what you do.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Bart for joining me. You can join the XPLUS team to get ready for the upcoming license enforcement in D365 FNSCM. We will have links in the show notes to connect with them and the other informational resources we discussed. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.